Hello everybody, my name is Colin Frisky. Today we will be learning how to save and load data. So, we'll just jump right into it by creating a load manager. So this will hold the information that you need to save and load, and it will do all the work for us. So, we need to import some namespaces quick. One will be system.io. Input output, and then another one quite long, it's system dot runtime. Yep, and then serialization, formatters, and then binary. I don't know, it's a long one. So now what we got to do is we want this to be created at the very beginning, so your very first scene. And then what we want is we never want it to go away, basically. And we never want more than one. So to do that, we need to create the awake function here. I just replaced start because it was easier. And so now what we got to do is if, actually, we should probably start with actually creating that quick. So a public static load manager is what we'll be using, and we'll call it instance. So what this is this is what we will be using to grab this instance of this program. So say we have a load manager already, and so we go here and we have the load manager script already. Now what this is going to do is this instance is going to be referencing this very prefab. So if there's more than one, then instance, it can't, since it's static, it won't be able to reference both of them, so it'll just reference one, and things can get a bit messy. So to do that, we need to do instance equally is null. So if instance doesn't already exist, then instance should equal this. Otherwise, if instance does exist and instance does not equal this, then what we need to do is we just need to destroy this game object. So, and then here, then we want to not destroy on load this game object. So we're going to keep one of them. So instance is going to set itself to one of them, and then all the other ones, if there is any, are going to be destroyed. So now that we do that, what you can see is, so what you want to do is in your build settings, you want basically a blank scene, kind of like this one, that on the start, all it does is it moves to the next scene. Or you can have it in like the main menu. Just know every time you go back to the main menu, it's going to destroy one of them. But so basically just have it the very beginning, so it loads and saves all of the data correctly. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to create the data that we want to be saved. So a public class, just call it data. You can call it whatever you'd like. And then in here, we'll do like a level, certain amount of experience, let's say strength and health, and then speed. Int speed, so basically just upgrades there. Level will just start at 1, and everything else will just start at 0. And now here we'll create just the default constructor that just sets level to 1, and then all of these to 0. Not exactly needed, but I do like constructors. Ooh, back. Ooh. Okay, there we go. So now that we did that, what we can do is come up here and create a variable that stores that data. I'm just going to call it data for now. And what we'll be using is this will basically just be the showcase of what we have loaded and what we want to save. So we should make these. So load. Why is it? Alright, just load with no parameters, and then a void save. So right now, right here, what we're gonna do is we'll create just a string. I'm gonna call it data file. Now this is what you want your file to be named. So we're just gonna call it data.dat, but you can name it whatever you'd like. The dot this is just the file type. You can make it whatever you'd like. You can make it text. I keep it something that isn't exactly a file type that is used very often, so I do .dat. Just kind of strays people away from opening it. I also normally use a hex value for this. So like I'll go into do a new window here, and then just like a string to just a string to hex converter, and then basically just say data, and then this encoded string is basically what I use. So, but you can name it whatever you'd like. It's just this is what I prefer, just to keep people away from messing with it or deleting it. And so now to create our save, what we want to do is we need to get the file path, or the file path that we want to put it. And for this, we're going to use the application persistent data path. This will be in your app data local, so it's pretty well hidden, and I think it will work. And then a /, and then add your data file. And we're going to put this in both of them because we're going to use it in both. So what we can do now is create a binary formatter named BF, and we'll just do a new binary. BF because it's going to be your best friend. And now we gotta grab that file or create it. So we're gonna create using the file path. And now what we gotta do is we're gonna use our best friend here because it does all the work for us to just serialize to this file that we just created, and we're gonna serialize the data variable up here that we have. So now once we do that, we just gotta make sure that we close the file. And there we go. That is these 5 lines. Save it to whatever device your build is on. And now what we got to do is we're going to have to load it. So we'll create our BF again. And what we're going to do is this time we're going to check if this file has already been created, because if it hasn't, then there's nothing to load, so just don't try. And then we're going to create another file stream and call it file. And then this time you could assume that we're just going to open it. And we're going to use that path again because it's the same file, and then just a file mode open. Now what we want to do is we want to take this file and basically put it back into this data variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a loaded data type. So the data variable called loaded, and this is what we will put what's in the file. So to do that, we're going to use our best friend again, and we're going to call deserialize. So saving serializes it, and then loading deserializes it back into the class. So here we'll just use our file. So getting an error. So it's cannot convert object to data. So it's just going to return just like a plain object, which we can then easily just cast back to data. So cast it into whatever class you're saving. So if whatever this is named, and whatever this name you would want right here. So now once we do that, what we can do is we can just set our data up there to loaded. And then close the file again. All right. So what we're gonna do is so we can see what it does, we'll do a void. We can just do the void start, and on start we're gonna load. So anytime we start our scene with this in, it's going to load the information. You can also do on enable if you want it to be more auto saved, but for now, just to keep it simple, I'm just going to do start. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create the update just to get some inputs. So when we press a button, it saves automatic, just for testing purposes. So S for save, and then we'll do L for load. And now we do that, we can come in here, and so you can see the data here. So it's 1000, and so when we hit play, it's not going to change. But if we I will, just to make it easier for you guys to understand what I'm pressing, we'll do a, we'll just call it, we'll say saved data when it saves, and then load data when it loads. So I'm not coming back in here. When we hit play, it should say it loaded, because load data, because we call it on start. And let's say we leveled up to 5. We have 85 XP remaining, and we made strength 2, health 1, and then speed 2. So now if we save, so I'm going to hit S to save, you can see we've saved that data. Now let's say so when we stop playing, you can see it goes back to the default or whatever it would be in here. But then when we load it again, so when we load it, you can see that it loaded the level, the XP, the strength, health, and speed already in there. So it's really easy with serializable types. But let's say we want to keep track of the player's basically the player's position at that time. So public vector3 position. So now we do this, we're going to come back in here, and you can see position is now in here, and it's at 0, 0, 0. That's all fine, but if we hit play, you can see it loads it, but if I try to hit S, you can see that we have come into an error because vector3 is not serializable. And so if you run into this error, you can always try to serialize the field, which will just serialize the next thing underneath it. But in this case, it won't work. So if you need to save position or rotation, you're going to have to manually create a class to do that for you. So I always like to create a point class for vectors. And what you can do is you can just create 3 floats, 1 for X, 1 for Y, and then 1 for Z. And then within a constructor here, just get a parameter for a vector3, and then just say x equals p.x, y equals p.y, and then z equals p.z. And then what we can do is you can just create a return function with a vector3 in it, and we can call it toVector, and then just return a new vector3 with x, y, and z. So now what we can use is we can use this point the same way we would use a vector, so to save our position. And so to help out, so to figure out where it's saving, because now that I've changed it this much, when it tries to save it to the file or load it to the file, it's going to give us an error because it's not going to find this exact class since we added the position. So what you'd want to do is you want to come in here and you'd want to go to your app data folder and go to local low, and then what you want to do is you want to go to whatever your project setting says for your company name and product name. So if you just started off, it'll be the default company and then whatever you named your project, or your project. So mine's default company tutorial. So app data, local low, default company, and then tutorial. And you can see right here we have this data file that we've already saved. So what we're gonna do, we're just gonna get rid of it. So now no file exists and it can basically restart And you can do this within code, just like a try and catch. If you're getting an error, then delete it and then resave it right away. But I'm lazy. So when I hit play, it loaded, but there's nothing in there. So let's say we moved 15 over, 1 up, and 3 back. And we've now gone to level 8, and we have 146 XP, and we have it put 4 strength, 3 speed, and then 1 health. And now, if I hit save, you can see it is saved correctly, and it's not getting us that non-serializable error. So now if I go back in, and you can see that it loads that position. And so now if you ever wanted to grab that position, you just do the POS position dot and then this 2 vector, and you can set actually we can do that quick just to kind of test it out, just to show you how to reference this load manager anyway. So we'll just call it test loading, and when we go in here start, what we're gonna do is basically we're gonna have a cube that we're going to want to move to that position. So we're gonna have a transform, we're gonna have our player, and we're gonna have some, just to kind of showcase, we're gonna have some UI, and we're gonna have a text box to hold all of our stats. So now on update here, what we can do, or we can actually just do void start, and we're gonna set the player position equal to our load manager. So we're gonna reference the load manager, and we're gonna use that instance that we created in the awake. So this static instance, so what it's doing is it's grabbing the prefab right here that is currently in the scene, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna reference that data that we stored into it, and we're gonna get our position. But you're gonna see that it's gonna give us an error because the position, remember, is a point because that's how it's saved. So we're just gonna call the 2 vector function, and then update, we're gonna just call a string, we're gonna call it s, we're gonna set it to nothing, and then s, we're gonna add the load manager instance data, we're gonna add our level, and then we're gonna add a new line, and we're just gonna clone this. We're gonna add our experience, our strength, our health, and our speed. And then what we're gonna do is we're just gonna set stats text to s. So now that we're testing that, we're gonna need to create a new, and this will be we're just gonna say test. Set it to 0, and we're going to drag test loading in here. Now it needs a player transform, which we'll just create a cube, set it to 0, and we're going to change our camera to perspective just so we can see, and I'm going to go up. So we'll just put it to 2, and then in the test we're going to set cube to our player, and then we're going to need a text box for the text. And I'm just gonna set it across the whole screen and bring it 16 from those, and this will just be stats. And we're gonna create a black, bold it, set it 16, and then go to test quick. And so what it's gonna do is it's gonna put all of our stats in this text, and then it's gonna move the player to the position which we did 15 over. So we might have to. So when we load it, you're gonna see we have our stats, and then within player, we have our load manager, which went to the don't destroy and load. So if we load a new scene, load manager will still stay. But you can see our little buddy did not move. He should have moved to this position. So to see what's up, it might be. We'll test something quick. It might be the script execution order. So what we're going to do is this default time is when everything's running. We're just going to make sure load manager runs before that. So add a new exception, add load manager, and drag it above the default time. And you can see it's going to run at -50. So any negative number goes before the default time. So now when we do this, see if this one works now. See, now what was happening was the start of test loading was actually running before the information was loaded in the load manager. So now if we go to our scene, you can see that our player here is at 15:43, and that is what we set. And just to kind of make it show better in the game, we're gonna flip around X and Z, and we're gonna save. And now when I hit play, you can see it moved backwards. And so that is just a quick explanation and basically just an outline for saving and loading. You can easily customize this and add a bunch. It's just a very good starting point for you guys. So if you liked it, please like and subscribe. And then if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Or if you want to ask for a tutorial, or if you need help with something, also comment below and I will try and help you as much as I can. So, hope you all enjoy. Have a great day.